One of the most shocking moments of my entire life occurred when I was in 6th grade in the middle of science class. Our teacher explained to us that we were going to be starting a new unit that was going to be a lot of fun, that there would be all kinds of experiments and hands-on activities. She opened up a big box and began pulling out all kinds of gadgets and gizmos and proceeded to set them on a table out of the way. She explained that we would be using these contraptions throughout our week-long unit, but that we weren't ready to use them yet. Well, just a little while later in the day, my friends and I decided that even though the teacher wasn't ready to use them yet, that we were. One of the guys picked up this interesting-looking thing that looked like a really big pencil sharpener. I say because it had this hand crank on one end of it, but the only difference was that in place of the round tube-like blades, that there were coils of wire with what looked like magnets that would rotate through the coils when the crank was turned. And finally, in place of the spot where the pencil was going, there were 2 little metal rods sticking up. Now, I was so intrigued by this contraption because I had no idea what it was. As I was observing it, one of my so-called friends said he had an idea of how it might work, and he excitedly told me to put my 2 fingers over the 2 metal rods. He proceeded to quickly turn the crank, and as the magnets spun around the coiled wire, my fingers on the rods provided the missing link to create an electrical circuit. As I mentioned before, this was truly one of the most shocking moments of my life, because I was literally shocked in that moment. That was my intro into our week-long unit on electricity. As the week went along, the teacher used that hand crank generator to power a light bulb that she hooked up to 2 ends of the metal rods. I was fascinated at how the electricity powered the light and made it visible, even though the electricity itself, of course, remained hidden and invisible. The same thing goes for the electricity that flows through each and every light bulb that lights up this church, our homes, our schools, our places of work. There's a hidden source of power that makes the lights go on each time that we flip the switch. And I mention this today because the idea of light was so prominent within the people of Israel throughout the Old Testament. In fact, in prophesying about the coming Messiah, the prophet Isaiah said, "Rise up in splendor, Jerusalem, your light has come. The glory of the Lord shines upon you. Darkness covers the earth, thick clouds cover the people, but upon you the Lord shines. Over you appears his glory. Nations shall walk by your light, and kings by your shining radiance." In light of this prophecy, it makes perfect sense that as Jesus went about his public ministry, he proclaimed, "I am the light of the world." He was making it known to the people that he was the one that Isaiah had spoken of. What I want to focus on this morning is that way before Jesus revealed to everyone that he was the light of the world, in fact, way before Jesus could even speak at all, because he was still just a tiny baby, that during this time there were 3 men who appeared in Jerusalem asking where they could find the newborn king of the Jews. Who were these men? The gospel simply tells us that they were magi that came from the east. Intense study reveals that they most likely came from the area around Persia, where there was a culture of people who were highly intellectual, sophisticated, philosophical, and within this culture there were many who were stargazers and astronomers. They studied the stars above that they saw in the night sky, and they were wise when it came to knowledge of the lights that shone in the midst of the darkness. They arrived in Jerusalem and revealed to Herod and the people there that they had followed the star in the sky that would lead them to this newborn king. Now, what I find fascinating about this is that these wise, intellectual, and scientifically minded men, they clearly saw the light. They saw the star and they followed it. But although they saw the light, there would have been no way for them to have known what gave the power to this light in the sky and what caused it to lead them to this newborn king. The source of the light remained hidden and mysterious, yet these wise men followed it nonetheless. Finally, they arrived in Bethlehem, and after their long journey, their eyes finally beheld the light of the world in the form of a baby lying in a manger. The baby that they saw with their eyes, it wouldn't have looked any different than any of the babies they would have seen from within their own people from the east. Yet they grasped and believed that there was a hidden, mysterious, and unseen power that resided within this baby that would truly enable him to be the light to the nations. Their leap of faith to believe this is no different than a sixth grader in our own day and age knowing that electricity is what causes a light bulb to illuminate, even though the electricity within cannot be perceived. Of course, these magi represent just one example out of hundreds upon hundreds of men and women in the scriptures who had remarkable faith and believed in something beyond what they could see. But the reason why I think that their example of faith that we celebrate today on the Epiphany is so powerful, shocking even, is that they were wise, they were learned, they were sophisticated intellectuals. And I say this because in today's day and age, so many people who reject God or say that they don't need God in their lives, they make these claims based on their belief that only people who are unsophisticated, non-intellectual, and foolish or naive would believe in the God of the Christians. So many people stumble and lack faith because they can't see it, and they can't prove everything that we teach or believe about God. Yet these same people benefit every single day from light that's powered by electricity that they can't see. These wise men were just that. Wise, intelligent men who believed in the unseen power that resided within the baby Jesus. They couldn't see the power within, but I'm sure they experienced the light that they would have experienced in his presence. When I say that, I'm not saying that the baby Jesus glowed or gave off a physical light. That'd be creepy. Rather, I believe they would have sensed a peace, a calmness of heart, an unexplainable fulfillment deep in their souls as they prostrated themselves before the God of the universe. I believe that this is what they would have experienced. And I say this with confidence because I know that this depth and peace is what believers and people of faith have experienced throughout the centuries when they bring themselves into the presence of Christ in the Eucharist. Some of these men and women of faith have no education at all. And countless others have held doctorates and prestigious positions at major universities. The fact of the matter is, no matter who we are, when we gaze upon the Eucharist, our eyes behold a simple wafer of bread. But if we open our heart to the Lord and receive him with faith, in particular spending time in adoration, not trying to figure things out, but simply being in his presence, and allowing him to assure us of this presence, even in the midst of our most difficult situations, then while we'll never physically see the power residing within, we will see the light. And the effects that this power can illuminate in our life, the results will be shocking. What all of us need to be willing to do if we seek to be men and women who truly live by faith, or perhaps we find ourselves maybe slip into the other camp sometimes, as we doubt based on a notion that we are wise and our intellect allows us to rise above faith. Either way, we need to be willing to follow in the footsteps of the Magi, who took the risk of leaving what they knew behind and journeying to meet this newborn king on his turf. We need to open our hearts to encountering Jesus, encountering the light of the world. If you do this, I'm not going to promise that you'll understand everything, or even that you'll see where God gets his power from. But if you stay long enough and truly open your heart, I assure you, you will experience the light. You see, in our own lives, there will always be things we don't understand, as well as situations that will confound us. We may find ourselves staring at something that life's placed in front of us and realize we have no clue what to do. Perhaps we'll recognize some of the elements, like I correctly identified the cores of wire and the magnets within that generator in my 6th grade classroom. We may never see where the power comes from, and that's okay. But we need to have faith that it's there, to allow ourselves to be led by the light of God, and to never doubt that that crank is always being turned by the hand of God. As a final note, I want to point out there wasn't just one Magi or one wise man. There were 3. In other words, they didn't journey alone. They journeyed together. They weren't afraid to rely on each other or help each other along the way. We too need to not be afraid to work together with others as we share and allow them to share on our journeys of faith. My dear brothers and sisters, I truly believe that all of you are wise and very, very intelligent. That's why I know that you will follow in the footsteps of the wise men who used their God-given smarts to assure them that stepping forward in faith was the most logical decision that they could ever make. So continue forward on your journey with the Lord. Rejoice to be led by the light. And make sure to take time to enjoy each shocking moment along the way.